Hey Matt, so now I'm going to turn the camera on you. I have a lot of questions that a lot of our viewers can really benefit from your input, from your experience, and your advice. How long have you been out here now?
It's been 6 years.
Yeah, it's been 6 years. That's crazy. I remember when it was your first year,
Yeah.
and you were a very different person from year one to now to year six.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how was it in your first year living in Bangkok?
Yeah, it's, my first year in Bangkok, I still sort of had fight aspirations, and so I was still trying to train a lot and trying to fight, and so my mindset was a bit different. I knew long term I wanted to stay out here, but I didn't really develop the roots to stay out here long term successfully. So there's a lot of culture shock that happens staying out here long term. Your friends and family, you don't talk to them as much. People drop off. You miss them a lot, especially in the first 6 months.
Right.
The first 6 months or a year is very difficult emotionally until you build up basically an infrastructure for yourself out here, which is very, very difficult for foreigners who can't speak Thai. It's difficult to have the Thai relationships, but it makes it even harder if you can't speak Thai.
So in that first year, did you try to befriend any expats, or did you try to get within that community locally?
Yeah, to some degree. The thing about the expat community is they like to drink, they like to party. It's sort of yeah, I like that too. But it's different than someone in the Muay Thai industry or someone that's interested in being a fighter.
Right. So now, what drew you out here? I mean, not having that base, maybe not having those strong contacts. I mean, obviously coming from the Bay Area, you had that Fairtex connection. Was that your first point of contact coming out to Thailand?
No, it wasn't. So I didn't have a ton of contacts when I came out. I did have some. Obviously, one of the probably biggest boons to my career was I'd interviewed Rob Cox, 5 or 6 years before I came out.
Yeah, he's a legend.
When I came out, shortly afterwards, he offered me a job at Max. And that was I would say that was a real start for my industry career out here.
Okay.
And then I started working at FA Group because they saw that I wasn't going home. That I wasn't making the short trips home or the long trips home. I was here to stay.
And how long were you here before you got that position down at Max?
So I was very, very lucky in terms of Max. It was about 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so very lucky. But I would say I worked at FA Group as a foreign liaison there, and that happened after a year. Before they offered me anything.
Yeah.
And I would say a lot of the other opportunities that came via Max came after being out here uninterrupted for 2 years.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, I would imagine a lot of the local companies that'd be kind of like Hawaii, right? So they're hesitant because so many transient visitors that come through here, and it's short term, and they don't know they don't want to invest into anyone that much unless they know that they're going to be there long term. So yeah, that's great. So,
absolutely.
But compared to year one compared to year six, right? I see obviously a dramatic change in everything about you. What can you say? What's the biggest Matt Lucas 6 years ago versus Matt Lucas today?
Yeah, I would say one, I really understand the business. I understand the sport a lot because I spent 5 years watching fights live every single day. So there's things you learn from watching the live fights, the technical aspects, the tactical aspects, the strategies going on. That's sort of the fight itself.
Right.
And you learn that from watching the fights over and over, which is, you develop your eye, as like a coach and instructor. So that's an immediate thing. But what a lot of people don't understand, especially in the West, is the business side of things. And when you're out here uninterrupted for about a year, you get to see the life cycle of fighters. So if you are at a gym like PK Sanchai, when Onion has been there for a year, he will have seen, okay, Tawan Chai is going up, Wan Chalang is going down, Prajan Chai is plateauing, and then he goes up, and then he's going down. So he's not seeing the whole life cycle of a single fighter, but he's seeing the general life cycle of fighters. When you're here longer term, 3 or 4 years, you're seeing the entire life cycle of a fighter, their ascension and, a lot of times the downward parts. So that understanding is very important from the athlete perspective. And then, when you're here year 4, 5 and onwards, you see the rise and fall of the businesses. Mm-hmm. Because usually the businesses take about a year or 2 to grow, and then, usually it's year 3 or 4 that they're stabilized. And then you can sort of see the dynamics of how the business of Muay Thai is growing and how it in turn shapes the athletes and coaches and communities.
And that's any business. That's pretty much any business. Yeah, any industry.
Business, yeah.
That's good.
So one of the things that say about Max Muay Thai, the first year was just the weekends, and the level was very high. And then they switched formats to do a daily show, and they were making regular income. And as a business, it created a culture around the stadium. So there was not only just the stadium selling tickets, there was also, food vendors. It was like hotels, it was motorbike guys.
Trickle down effect.
Yeah, it was a whole trickle down effect that you don't realize if you're just here for 3 months or 4 months. Even a year, you won't really see the development as much. Say, for instance, there was a food stall lady that sold, pad thai right next to Nax, and her son, came of age during the first 2 years and started fighting regularly at the stadium.
Her son did?
Her son did.
Oh, interesting.
So this kid, Brognick, he fought regularly.
Out of which gym?
He fought out of the Max Muay Thai gym as well. So you see like that rise and sort of some of the cultural things develop.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. So, any advice that you can give to anybody that's looking to come to Thailand, and what could that be?
Yeah, I mean, economically, there's some very basic things. It costs, if you save up money, it costs about $1,000 to $1,500 a month. The longer you stay, the cheaper it gets. And after 6 months or more, you're usually able to work some sort of arrangement out to drop your prices down, to drop your overhead. If you're looking to stay past the year 1 or 1 mark, you need to invest in yourself as like a business and brand. In order to really develop. You look at someone like Topic. The opportunities for him did not come from staying 6 months. It's come from staying 2 to 3 years. Especially the relationships with the gym. They develop over time. If you want a strong relationship with the gym, you realistically, to get like the championship opportunities and stuff, it's basically a 2 to 3 year commitment.
Are you finding that in your case?
Yeah, definitely. You have to earn their trust. They have to learn how you fight, and not only that, but the bettors learn how you fight. So now they're more invested in betting on you and coming to watch your fights. Because if you come there and you're there, like 1 month or 2 months, bettors are gonna forget about you. And the gym owners are gonna forget about you. They forget about your style. They don't trust you as a fighter, especially like I was saying, the bettors. If they can trust you and they know how you perform, maybe when you're down in that 4th round and then you have to come back and knock them out in the 5th round, and you've done that a couple of times already in your career, then now the bettors know, okay, you know what? I'm gonna bet my whole purse on this guy because I know he has a very high chance. He has a very high chance of knocking out the opponent, and they know you have heart.
Right.
And heart to me is just determination. So if they can see that, then they'll be more invested in you as well.
One of the, I think, important things, talking about this is also when you go home, you're basically starting at day 1 again. So a very concrete example was Sam Bark, was scheduled. He fought Seksan or Kwan Muay at Max Muay Thai, and then a few months later, it was scheduled to fight at Rajadamnern. But Sam had to go home. You know, he'd been out here for a long time. He had to go home for a month, and in that month, he missed the opportunity.
That was like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
Remember that.
But basically, you know, Seng Tianoi, his trainer at the time, was like, listen, you go home, everyone forgets you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to stay. And what happened was Chad Collins, who was out here at the time, got the opportunity to fight Seksan. You know, main event, massive fight on a big promotion because he was here. And so you need to realize when you go home, you start over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, yes, it's important to go home, but if you really, really want this, like, this becomes your home.
Yeah, it's like we were saying before, it's all about making those sacrifices. You have no other choice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think about it as a sacrifice. I think about it as a choice.
And it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah, it's an investment in yourself. Like, you know, you can either choose to, you know, stay in America and, you know, invest in whatever you want there, and or you can choose to invest in a career out here. Obviously, for me, investing my time and energy out here has paid off huge, massively.
Exponentially.
Yeah, exponentially. And, you know, as there's a lot of space for pioneers out here still, you know, especially as Westerners.
Yeah. Now the sport's growing
Yeah.
in that direction.
You know, I think all of my hard work in the last 6 years is going to massively pay off in 3 to 4.
Agreed.
Which, you know, if I'd stayed in the States, you know, working some job, you know, I'd probably max out.
And burnout.
I'd max out and burn out and, you know, be unhappy and drinking and not be having a good time. Whereas out here, yes, it's more difficult, but the rewards are there.
Yeah.
And you live a way more interesting life.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe, and share.